Welcome back to the Manhwa Recap Vault. Today's story is something genuinely unusual. Not a dungeon, not a martial arts tournament, not a system or a status window or a monster gate. This is a corporate regression manhwa. And before you scroll past, understand that this title has accumulated 470 million views worldwide and is widely considered one of the best surprises in the genre. If you've ever worked in a toxic office and fantasized about going back in time with everything you know, this one is for you. He stood at the top, 40-something years old, CEO of Hansung Electronics, a company he built from a mid-tier subsidiary into a multinational titan through 2 decades of ruthless, unrelenting, borderline inhuman corporate warfare. The kind of career that business magazines write profiles about and MBA students study in case competitions, and nobody who mattered was there to see it. Not his family, not his friends, not a single person he'd genuinely cared about before the machine swallowed him whole. He'd sacrificed every meaningful relationship on the altar of quarterly earnings, and by the time he reached the summit, the view was nothing but empty boardrooms and subordinates who feared him more than they respected him. And then he wakes up, 20 years younger, back in 2007, a junior employee at the very company he will one day lead. This is not a revenge fantasy. This is a man staring at the wreckage of his own choices and being handed the impossible, a second attempt. To understand why the regression matters, you need to understand who Yoo-hyun Han became. And I mean became. Because the man at the top in 2027 is not the person he started as. He was manufactured, shaped by a system that rewarded cruelty and punished compassion with surgical consistency. Yoo-hyun, known to international partners as Steve Han, rose through Hansung Electronics the way a blade rises through bone, efficiently, without sentiment. Every promotion was earned through a combination of genuine brilliance and a willingness to do what his competitors wouldn't. He outworked everyone around him, yes, but he also outmaneuvered them. He identified threats before they materialized, and neutralized them with the kind of cold strategic thinking that made people describe him not as a leader, but as a weapon. The corporate culture at Hansung was brutal, not in the dramatic cinematic sense, in the grinding, dehumanizing structural sense. 16-hour days were baseline, weekends were for the uncommitted, personal boundaries were treated as evidence of insufficient dedication. The hierarchy was absolute, the politics vicious, and the unspoken rule was simple: climb or be climbed over. Yoo-hyun didn't create this culture, he inherited it, but he thrived in it, and in thriving, he perpetuated it. He became the thing the system designed him to be, a perfect instrument of corporate Darwinism, the boss who sent emails at midnight and expected responses by 1, the executive who cancelled a subordinate's paternity leave because a product launch took priority, the CEO who fired a loyal department head of 15 years over a single quarter of underperformance. He told himself it was necessary, that the market demanded it, that sentiment was a luxury that shareholders didn't subsidize, and by the metrics, that mattered. Revenue, market share, stock price, global expansion, he was spectacularly right. Hansung Electronics under Steve Han became a juggernaut, a company that competed with the largest conglomerates in Korea and won. But the metrics that didn't appear on earnings reports told a different story entirely. His marriage collapsed, not dramatically, gradually, the way a structure fails when you remove one load-bearing element at a time. Missed anniversaries, forgotten birthdays, conversations that became briefings, a wife who stopped arguing because arguing requires the belief that the other person is listening. His children grew up without a father who was a signature on school permission slips and a voice on speakerphone during dinner. They learned to stop expecting him at their events. They learned to stop expecting him at all. His friends, the ones from before, the ones who knew him when he was still capable of laughing without calculating the networking value of the room, they drifted away. Not with anger, with something worse. Resignation, the quiet acknowledgement that the person they knew no longer existed. By 2027, Yoo-hyun Han was the most successful man in any room he entered, and the loneliest. The regression doesn't happen through a magical artifact or a divine intervention or a system notification. It simply happens. He closes his eyes in 2027 and opens finds them in 2007, young again, junior again, sitting at a desk he hasn't seen in 20 years, surrounded by colleagues he'd long since forgotten or discarded, and for the first time in decades, Yoo-hyun Han feels something that corporate success had surgically removed from his emotional repertoire: regret. The genius of this manhwa's premise is that it inverts the standard regression formula. In most regression stories, the protagonist returns to the past with future knowledge and uses it to dominate, to crush enemies faster, to accumulate power earlier, to speedrun the same journey with cheat codes enabled. Yoo-hyun has every tool to do exactly that. He knows which markets will boom. He knows which executives will betray whom. He knows every internal power struggle, every failed product line, every personnel decision that shaped the next 2 decades. He could, with minimal effort, fast-track himself to the CEO's office a decade ahead of schedule. But that's the path he already walked, and he knows where it ends. So instead of optimizing the same ruthless trajectory, Yoo-hyun does something far more radical for a regression protagonist. He pauses. He looks at the people around him, the colleagues he steamrolled the first time, the relationships he severed for marginal professional advantage, and he makes a different calculation. This time, he decides the goal isn't just the top. The goal is arriving at the top with something left. That doesn't mean he becomes passive. This is not a story about a man who gives up ambition and learns to enjoy sunsets. Yoo-hyun is still ferociously intelligent, still strategically gifted, still entirely capable of reading a boardroom like a chess position. The difference is in what he chooses to do with that capability. Where he once sabotaged a colleague's project to secure his own promotion, he now finds ways to elevate both. Where he once treated junior employees as expendable resources, he now invests in their development because he remembers with painful clarity which of those juniors went on to become industry leaders and which ones burned out because nobody bothered to protect them. He identifies the toxic managers, the ones who created the culture that shaped him, and begins a quiet, methodical campaign to undermine their influence, not through confrontation, through competence, by delivering results so consistently and so visibly that the people above him are forced to question whether the old methods are actually necessary or merely habitual. The corporate chess is extraordinary. Yoo-hyun knows the moves before they're made. He knows which executive is embezzling, which product line will fail, which partnership will collapse. He uses this knowledge not as a weapon, but as a scalpel, excising the cancerous elements of Hansung's culture while preserving the talent and potential that the old system was designed to exploit. It's subtle, it's patient, and it is absolutely riveting to watch unfold. But the past is not a blank canvas. It's a minefield of relationships that existed before Yoo-hyun's original rise. Relationships he barely noticed the first time because he was too busy climbing to look sideways. Former classmates now working in adjacent departments. A university mentor who recommended him for the position and still believes in his potential. A colleague who will, in the original timeline, become his closest rival, but who right now in 2007 is just a nervous new hire sharing the same cramped office. Yoo-hyun remembers what each of them becomes. The question is whether he can change the conditions that made them become it. The complication, and this is where the story elevates from good to genuinely brilliant, is that Yoo-hyun's approach generates resistance from exactly the people who benefit from the status quo. The executives who built their careers on fear-based management, the department heads who maintained power through information hoarding and strategic backstabbing, the entire middle management layer that functioned as a protection racket, keeping juniors terrified and seniors insulated from accountability. These are not cartoon villains. They are realistic, recognizable corporate operators, people who learned the same lessons Yoo-hyun learned the first time around and applied them with the same ruthless consistency. They genuinely believe that the brutal culture works because by the metrics they care about, it does. Revenue goes up, competitors are crushed, and the human cost is someone else's problem. When Yoo-hyun begins quietly dismantling the mechanisms of their power, protecting whistleblowers they tried to silence, promoting talent they tried to suppress, building alliances across departments that were deliberately kept isolated, they notice and they respond. The political warfare that follows is the manhwa's greatest strength. This is not physical combat. There are no fists, no swords, no supernatural abilities. The weapons are performance reviews, budget allocations, project assignments, and the carefully curated flow of information through an organization where knowledge is currency. Yoo-hyun's future knowledge gives him an enormous advantage. But it's not omniscience. He changed the timeline by acting differently, which means events begin to diverge from what he remembered. Alliances he expected to hold fracture because he removed the pressure that originally held them together. Enemies he anticipated come from different directions because his reforms disrupted the power dynamics that created them in the first place. He's playing chess against opponents who don't know he can see 10 moves ahead, but the board keeps shifting because his own moves are changing the game. And the emotional stakes compound alongside the professional ones. Yoo Hyun reconnects with people he lost the first time, colleagues who become strangers, a mentor he betrayed for a promotion, a friend he let take the fall for a project failure because protecting him would have cost political capital. These reunions are not triumphant, they're excruciating, because Yoo Hyun remembers everything he did to these people and they don't. They look at him with trust he hasn't earned, trust he actively destroyed in the original timeline. Every interaction is shadowed by the knowledge of what he's capable of and the quiet determination to be something different. The manhwa handles these relationships with remarkable restraint. There are no dramatic confessions, no tearful apologies that couldn't make sense in context, just a man being slightly kinder, slightly more present, and slightly more willing to absorb a cost that his previous self would have deflected without hesitation. And the cumulative effect is devastating. Not because any single moment is extraordinary, but because the pattern reveals a man genuinely, painfully, trying to become someone better. I want to explain why this manhwa has 470 million views, because the number demands an explanation. The regression genre is crowded, overwhelmingly, impossibly crowded. Hundreds of titles feature protagonists who return to the past with future knowledge. The formula is well established. Go back, exploit foreknowledge, become overpowered, crush enemies, accumulate wealth and status. A man's man uses the same mechanism and arrives at a completely different destination. The corporate setting is, first, genuinely unique. In a genre dominated by hunters, dungeons, magic systems, and martial arts, a story set entirely in office buildings and boardrooms shouldn't work. It works because the author, Lucas, understands that corporate politics, at a sufficiently high level, is combat. The stakes are careers, livelihoods, and families. The weapons are information, alliances, and leverage. The casualties are real people who lose their jobs, their homes, their sense of self-worth because someone 3 levels above them decided they were expendable. This is a world most readers recognize, not from fantasy, from life. And that recognition gives the story an emotional immediacy that no amount of world building can replicate. When Yoo Hyun protects a junior employee from an abusive manager, the reader doesn't need an exposition panel explaining why it matters. They know. They've been that junior employee, or they've watched it happen, or they've been the person who should have intervened and didn't. The emotional core is what elevates it above the genre. Regression stories are typically about power. This one is about regret. The question isn't how quickly can the protagonist dominate? It's, can a man who became a monster through systemic pressure choose to be human the second time around, even when the same system is applying the same pressure? That's a profoundly adult question, and the manhwa treats it with the seriousness it deserves. Yoo Hyun's transformation isn't instantaneous. Old habits surface constantly. There are moments where his instinct is to crush, to exploit, to deploy the ruthless efficiency that made him successful the first time, and the internal struggle between who he was and who he's trying to be is written with genuine psychological nuance. The supporting cast deserves recognition as well. The colleagues aren't props for Yoo Hyun's development. They are fully realized characters with their own ambitions, fears, and compromises. The reader watches them navigate the same toxic culture that produced Yoo Hyun and understands that any of them could become what he became. The system isn't broken. It's functioning exactly as designed, and the people inside it are doing their best to survive, which sometimes means becoming complicit in the very machinery that's grinding them down. Hanung So's adaptation captures this with remarkable visual storytelling. Boardroom scenes that in lesser hands would be static talking heads become tense, claustrophobic confrontations where micro-expressions carry more weight than any fight sequence. Delgado's art gives each character a physicality that communicates their power dynamics before a word is spoken, the way a senior executive occupies space versus how a junior employee contracts into to theirs. And the pacing is exceptional. Corporate drama requires patience. The payoffs are slow, the victories incremental, the setbacks often invisible to anyone outside the situation. The creative team understands that a perfectly timed email can be as satisfying as a perfectly executed punch, and they structure their reveals accordingly. When Yoo-hyun's long-term strategies finally converge, the satisfaction is immense, precisely because you watch every piece being placed over dozens of chapters. What I've covered is the foundation, the opening arcs that establish who Yoo-hyun was, who he's trying to become, and the environment that will resist that transformation at every turn. The story expands considerably from here. Hansung Electronics is not an isolated ecosystem. It exists within a larger corporate landscape of competitors, regulators, media, and political interests. As Yoo-hyun rises, the scale of the opposition increases. The people who benefit from the old culture are not limited to middle management. They extend to board members, shareholders, and institutional structures that have been profitable specifically because they're exploitative. There is a particular thread, one I won't detail here because the payoff deserves to be experienced fresh, involving a decision Yoo-hyun made in the original timeline that destroyed someone's career. Someone who didn't deserve it. Someone whose only crime was being in the wrong position at the wrong time when Yoo-hyun needed a scapegoat. In this timeline, that person still exists, still works at Hansung, still trusts their colleagues, and Yoo-hyun has to look them in the eye every day knowing what he did, what he will do if he's not careful, and find a way to ensure it never happens again. That thread alone is worth the read. The K-drama adaptation announcement signals how seriously this property is being taken, and given the current wave of Korean corporate dramas, this source material is extraordinarily well positioned. The manhwa is ongoing, updated every Thursday on Webtoon, and shows no signs of slowing. But what keeps readers coming back, what explains those hundreds of millions of views, is not the corporate strategy or the regression mechanics. It's the question the story keeps asking, chapter after chapter, with increasing complexity and decreasing certainty. Can you reach the top and still be someone worth knowing when you get there? Yoo-hyun Han is trying to find out, and watching him try is one of the most compelling experiences in the genre right now. A Man's Man is available on Webtoon, updated every Thursday. The novel is written by Lucas, adapted by Hanung, with art by Degado. It is ongoing, with 470 million views globally. A K-drama adaptation has been announced, and the Reddit community has been calling it the best surprise of 2026. A corporate regression manhwa that nobody expected to care about, and now nobody can stop reading. If you've ever looked at the regression genre and wished someone would do something genuinely different with the premise, this is it. No dungeons, no monsters, no stat screens, just a man, an office, and 20 years of knowledge he's determined to use better than the first time. If this breakdown resonated, let me know in the comments. Manhwa Recap Vault covers the most compelling stories in the genre every week. Subscribe if you'd like to be here for the next one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next recap.